Okay. So I think we're starting a new Mishnah today. No, one more part. Number 12. Not number 12, page 13. 8, we didn't do 8?
No, 8 and no, we did 8. Oh no, sorry, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have to check.
Yeah, we're up to page 13. Sorry. Thank you. So again, the complete phrase was in reference to Aaron. Ohev Shalom, he loves peace, he pursues peace, and loves all creations. And the last thing was Umakarvan the Torah, brings them closer to the Torah. So first of all, the simple meaning of those words are, if you really love someone and you want to help them, you want to be kind to them, naturally, you'll do things that are for their benefit. And if you yourself believe in Torah, believe in mitzvahs, and believe that this is the greatest benefit for a person in their life, so clearly you'll want to share that with the other person. So because he loved people and loved peace and pursued peace, therefore, he also brought them closer to Torah, because that's the ultimate love. Giving a person a job is an expression of kindness and love. Giving a person clothing, giving a person food. But imagine giving somebody Torah, you're giving them something eternal more than anything else. But there's another point here, which is something that the Rebbe focuses on and talks about this a lot. And that is, this could have been worded two ways. One way is that it brings them closer to the Torah. The other way it could have been worded is it brings the Torah closer to them. It sounds like, what's the difference? But the truth is, it's a big difference.
Very big.
The difference is bringing the Torah closer to the person means that I'm compromising on the true standards of Torah, bringing it down to the person so that person should be satisfied. Bringing the person closer to Torah means the opposite. I'm raising the bar with the person. I'm raising the person. I'm bringing him to a place that he will appreciate Torah and take Torah as it is. So what we're referring to is the fact that there are people who are also trying to spread Torah, but because they believe that not everybody's ready to accept Torah, not everybody's ready to accept Torah as it is, and the best way to do that is by making changes and compromises in the Torah. So this is really the philosophy of the conservative movement. The people who started the conservative movement were actually Orthodox Jews. So yes, so they themselves were observant. They kept Torah, they kept mitzvahs, but they believed that the younger generation, it's too much for them and they won't be able to handle it, so we have to make some changes. And by making these changes, it'll be more acceptable to them. They'll be able to handle it. So they started to make a lot of these changes. I mean, if you know the difference, reform is one thing and conservative is another thing. Reform doesn't go by halacha at all. Reform is just do whatever you like to do. The temple sometimes could resemble more of a church than it resembles a synagogue. The rabbi doesn't even wear a kippah on his head. The services could be on Sunday instead of Shabbos. I mean, it's totally...
They have female rabbis.
What? They have female rabbis. So it's totally not inconsistent with halacha at all. Conservative is not like that. Conservative, in general, follow halacha. They even have a seminary where they study Torah and they study Gemara and all that. But part of the studying is to find ways of explaining and applying the halacha in a way that it should be desirable to people. So first of all, for example, one of the things which is traditional in every shul, is that there's a mechitza, there's a partition between the men and the women in the shul. So they felt this is something which the new generation won't be able to handle. So they put away with the mechitza. We can have a shul without a mechitza, that's fine. Yeah.
Are they basing this on another opinion of halacha, or they're just deciding they're not following that?
Right.
Because you said they're so embedded in halacha.
So I'm getting to that. Right. That's true. They are not basing it on opinion of halacha. They're just basing it on the fact that times are different. Now we have to make changes to save Judaism, so to speak. And a lot of the other changes, like a conservative rabbi can tell you, oh, you live far away, so it's okay. You can drive to shul on Shabbos. Because if you won't, you'll never go to shul. So there's no basis in halacha that it's permissible, but the basis is the understanding that if I don't allow them to go to shul, they'll be alienated completely. So it's okay. So basically, it's making changes in the halacha and how it's being applied, and that's their basis. And what these words mean is, no, you're supposed to bring a person closer to Torah, but not that's called bringing the Torah closer to them. I'm making changes in Torah so it's more applicable to them. Now, what's the reason behind it? In essence, it makes so much sense what they're saying, that there's certain things that people just can't handle, they can't relate to. We're living in a modern world today where people don't accept certain things, and the only way they'll accept Torah is if you make some changes that'll make them happier, so to speak. So first of all, we see the facts. The facts are, if anybody wants to do the research, you can do the research, but the facts are that most of the majority of people from the conservative movement are either, for the most part, their children become reform and they assimilate, or if not, they go in the other direction, they become totally observant of Torah mitzvah. There's no continuity to the conservative movement, and there's no continuity to the reform movement. By the way, the reform is also not into converting into another religion. They're also Judaism, but they made changes which are totally, baseless. And again, there's no continuity to the reform movement. Go online and look around, you'll see the reform movement is crying about the fact that they're losing their membership. And even the membership that they had, so many are not even Jewish. They did the conversion not according to halacha, or they have an opinion that if the father is Jewish, that it's okay, the mother doesn't have to be Jewish. And also, if they're both not Jewish, but if they're very kind people, they can also become Jewish. All sorts of things that happen. And the reason is because their membership is just going down and dwindling, and the same is with conservative movement. That's a fact. So to say that these compromises was going to help stop assimilation, it's not working. Why is it not working? So there's an incident that once happened at a meeting. There was a meeting here in America between various leaders and rabbis, and the previous rabbi was at the meeting, and one of the rabbis brought this up. I don't know if he meant it like conservative, but he gave this analogy. He said, normally when you want to drink water, you make sure the water is clean and pure. Otherwise, you don't drink it. What if there's a fire burning and you need water not to drink, but to extinguish a fire? Then you don't examine the water if it's clean or it's not clean. Just grab the water and put out the fire. And he concluded, right now there's a fire of assimilation in the Jewish world. Jewish men and women are just moving away, drifting away, and they are unfortunately becoming uninvolved with Judaism or intermarrying, and we're losing Jews. So it's a fire, and let's not be so petty about how pure it is, which means how it is purely according to Allah. So the previous server said it's a very good analogy, but if you take that analogy a little bit further, say, okay, if there's a fire, just grab any bucket that you have liquid and throw it on the fire. What if it's kerosene?
Explosion.
Not only you haven't put out the fire, you actually make the fire bigger. And what he explained was that when you compromise in Torah, you're making the fire bigger, not smaller. And the reason is because when you are compromising in Torah, you're basically making a statement. And the statement is that Torah is adjustable. It's adjustable. You adjusted one way, and your children decided to adjust it another way. Your grandchildren try to adjust it a third way, and your great-grandchildren now don't even need to adjust it anymore. They're out. I remember meeting this woman. This was years and years ago, before the Chabad Shluchim were all over the place, and she sent her kids to a college in Atlanta, Georgia. There was no shliach then. And I said to her, like, what are you doing to make sure that they, that they're keep in touch with Judaism? They're going to a place where there's Jews, there's non-Jews, and in college, they want to make sure that they don't get intermarried. She laughed, she says, Rabbi, my daughter knows she can only marry a Jew. I mean, it's not even a question. There's nothing to talk about. Unfortunately, so many parents had that in their head. And their explanation is very simple. The mother saw more Judaism than her daughter saw. The mother saw a grandfather or somebody that went to shul, kept a little kosher, went to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Every generation sees less than the generation before. So those things that by the parents were like unthinkable, it was absolutely beyond question that this can't happen. To the next generation, it's not beyond question. I found someone, and the guy will say, I fell in love with this person, I want to marry them. And you'll say, but you can't, you're Jewish. They'll say, well, whether they say it or they think it subconsciously, look, you're not keeping Shabbos, you're not keeping kosher, you're not doing this because doesn't work for you. This doesn't work for me either. Like, where do you put the foot down? If Torah and mitzvahs are adjustable, they're adjustable for me like it is for you. You don't like my adjustment, so that's your problem, that's my problem. But when you give over Torah and you say this is as it is, of course you try to teach and you may explain it, that people should relate to it, should understand it, should appreciate it. But this is the halacha, it's not changeable. It's like, imagine, I think of it this way, imagine somebody is looking to buy furniture for their apartment. I have a beautiful apartment, it's an amazing location, it's right near the water, and it's this and that, and she has to wants to get furniture, and she's been shopping for an entire year, almost every day, trying to find something, and she can't find it. Finally, she found something. It's beautiful. It fits into her furniture and the decorations in her house. She's so excited. And the guy comes back to her and says, sorry, I measured your house, and your dresser is like 72 inches, and the room is only 70 inches. It's not going to fit in. And she starts crying, says, sir, I've been spending months, a whole year looking for this furniture. I finally found it. Where's your compassion? She says, lady, I have a lot of compassion, but it's just not going to fit. Come on. If you want to make it fit, it could fit. Just try your best. Lady, I can't try my best. It can't fit. In other words, it's a fact. It has nothing to do with me. People who make adjustments in Torah don't look at the Torah laws like a fact. They look at it like laws in a country where you can bend the law, you can change the law. The law constantly changes in every country. It's man-made laws. So therefore, when the rabbi is not going along with what you want, it looks like he's not compassionate, he's not caring, he's not sensitive. The rabbis, we don't make up laws. The laws are in the Torah. Hashem gave it to us. They're the only ones who they sort of let us know what it says in the book. But the law is the Torah. You can't make those adjustments. It so happens to be that impresses people more than changing the law, because people are looking for emes. And then they see this is emes. And it's not that you tell the rabbi, listen, I'll give a contribution, $10,000 for the synagogue. Just tell me it's okay. It doesn't work. Some places could work. Oh, 10,000? Okay, yeah, I think I found something for you. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. It's Torah's emes. Emes doesn't bend. Emes doesn't change. Emes doesn't have compromises. When you do find in Torah that you go to a rabbi and says, under these circumstances, you can do this and that, he's not changing Torah. That's Torah itself. That's part of Torah. So therefore, when you tell somebody you can drive to shul on Shabbos, you're allowed to drive to shul, or you're allowed to do this, or you're allowed to do that because of your circumstances. If it's not consistent with Jewish law, then that means you're changing the law, and that's unacceptable. So that's why it says Mekavan Torah. So some people ask a question and they say, wait a second, isn't this totally against the whole idea of Mitzvahim? When you do Mitzvahim, you walk over to a man and you say, put on tefillin. You're basically saying you don't have to do Torah, you don't have to do Mitzvah, just Shabbos candles and you're fine. Why isn't that compromising in Torah? I know you all know the answer, but how would you articulate the answer?
You're not making them, trying to figure out how to say it. You're not making them break anything in order to get them to come closer to Torah. You're just having them do a mitzvah as they are, and they're not breaking anything, you're doing something positive, not impressing.
No, you're giving the right answer, but I'm looking for a more clear way to articulate it.
No.
Yes.
So you're not telling them that it's okay whatever you're doing. You're telling them, I hear you, you're not at that part, but you could add in this.
That's what Nadia just said, yeah.
We're starting with an action as opposed to.
But you
It's
tell
not
me
the
that,
idea that you.
but you're still
first
saying
do
one
and
action
then
is good enough.
understand. Right, but there's also the idea that you first do the action and then
That's
we'll
true.
understand later.
but you're still telling them, just keeping candles enough. You don't have to keep Shabbos and all that.
Isn't it like
Yeah.
you're doing like one mitzvah, so like once you do like one mitzvah, like, maybe like you can like do other mitzvahs as well.
You remind me of a story. I was once in a taxi, and there was a yeshiva bacher with me, a young boy, and he talks to the taxi driver about putting on tefillin, and the taxi driver refuses. So he said to the taxi driver, he says, "Listen, I don't keep apparently he knew something about Judaism. He said, I don't keep kosher, I don't keep Shabbat, I don't go to synagogue, so I don't put on tefillin." So he said to him, "Well, if you put on tefillin, that'll bring you to do all the other things." Well, whoa, that's the case. I'm surely not going to put on tefillin. So if you tell somebody, just light a candle, before you know it, you'll be doing everything. They'll say, goodbye. I'll tell you what you're all saying. I just want to put it into different words and make sure it's more clear. There's a misconception that Judaism is one package deal, which means if I don't do everything, then nothing has any worth. For example, Shabbos. If a woman lights Shabbos candles but doesn't keep Shabbos in any other way, is there any credit to her Shabbos candles? Does it mean anything? Is it worth anything? Or it's worthless because you don't do all the other things?
Eternal.
And that's what we're saying, but that's the message. Don't think that just because you're not ready to do everything else, your candle lighting is nothing worth. Your candle lighting is very precious to Hashem. You're putting on tefillin is very precious to Hashem. Hearing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, even though you're not in shul, you're not doing anything else, you're not dipping the apple into honey, you're not keeping any customs, just layering the shofar. What we're saying is that just because you're not doing the other things, it doesn't take away the value of this one thing that you are doing, and do it. Yeah.
And if they refuse to even do it, then like every chance of I always like trip up with that one. Is a success because you're reminding them that they are a Jew. Like whenever you say, "Hey, are you Jewish?" and they say,
Right.
"Yes," and even if they refuse, it's like you're reminding them that they're a Jew.
Right. So it's a certain awareness. But I'm now, this discussion I'm concerned about is why isn't it compromising? So the answer is compromising when a rabbi tells you, you don't have to put on tefillin. You don't have to keep Shabbos. You don't have to do this mitzvah. That's what's the word? It's distortion of Torah. Torah doesn't say that. But if I say to someone that that just because you're not doing that, it doesn't take away from the good that you are doing, that's a different message, and people love that message, and that's why they're excited to do the one mitzvah, because they realize, yes, one mitzvah is precious to Hashem, and it means something, so they'd rather do it. In other words, what people relate to is emes. That's my point. A number of years ago, there was a big convention. The Reform movement has this convention once in, I think, 30 years or something. Again, you can look this up online, you'll find it, but I remember at the time, everybody was talking about it. And what did he bring up? He brought up Chabad. And he said, the people out there, they're not religious. We have so much more in common with them than Chabad. How does Chabad get them and how come we can't get them? At the end of their whole convention, they decided we have to introduce more Jewish ideas, like belief in God, and making a bracha. I mean, they brought in certain things. You can see this. I have the articles downstairs. In other words, they realized that if you don't bring in something which is emes, that people are not attracted to it. The other life is easier and they have no feeling for it. So therefore, when he says that this could be kerosene, is because if I'm giving a compromise, even though technically it's easier and some people go for it, but on the long run, it's going to do more damage than good, because once you make compromises, where do you stop? And the second thing is that you're not giving Torah as emes. You're presenting Torah as something which is adjustable, and if you can adjust it, everybody adjusts it according to their desire, and the Torah has no continuity. So there's a few other phrases and quotes related to this, and that is, I guess I'll go to number 3 first. Number 3 is HaTorah hi nitzchis, which means the Torah is eternal. The Torah, the values of Torah, eternal. So yes, there might be different ways of going about things and doing things, but the Torah and its principles are eternal. So there's another question which I want to bring up, and that is, we're saying the Torah is eternal and no changes. Really? In Judaism, in Orthodox Judaism, there's no changes? Let me tell you a little secret. It's full of changes.
But it's not.
The mere fact that we're sitting here in this room is a big change. What?
But it's not the Torah that's not eternal, it's the commentaries and what the rabbis think, no?
Yeah.
The Torah is still.
I want to explain that. What are the changes that I'm talking about? First of all, up until a little bit over 100 years, there was no such thing as a woman's yeshiva. So for a few thousand years, women did not study in yeshiva. About 100 and something years ago, there was a woman, Sarah Schneer was her name, and she saw a need for women to study in yeshiva. She introduced it to the rabbis, and the rabbis agreed that it's really an urgent matter. It's the call of the hour, and she made the yeshiva, but it's a change. Not only that, a lot of the things you learn in halacha, you learn that in the Torah it says one way, but the rabbis instituted certain halachas. That's a change. Muktzah, that you can't handle an iPhone on Shabbos. You can't use an iPhone on Shabbos. But what about just moving it? What about moving a hammer? Moving other objects which are not permissible to move on Shabbos? That's called muktzah. The rabbis instituted later. There's so many other halachas that rabbis instituted. So how can you say there's no change? You probably also know that there was a time the oral Torah wasn't allowed to be written down. It was supposed to be studied orally. That's why it's called the oral Torah. And then, I'll get to you in a second, there was a rabbi called Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, and he saw that as the exile is getting more and more intense, people are beginning to forget Torah and are stopping to study in these yeshivas the way they used to. So he said, if we don't write things down, people are going to forget it. So he made a change. So there's so many changes in Torah. How is that consistent with saying that the Torah is eternal and there's no change? So actually, I just want to say you brought something up before, and that's the answer to this question. What do you want to say, Cheshvan?
I was gonna say because we're making it more stricter, not lenient,
Still a change.
but it's towards a positive, like to create more.
And not always is more strict. Like women learning in yeshiva is not more strict. That's being more lenient, allowing something which wasn't allowed before.
But it's to be able to keep the values.
So the Reform and conservatives say the same thing. We're doing it to keep the values.
No, but taking off the core values in order to.
But they're saying you're still making change, just like us. Yes.
But there's no halacha for women not to learn. It was just not.
No, but do you remember what you said in the beginning?
Right, that
That what?
you first do the action and then you learn.
Not that.
Not that.
I'll remind you what you said. What you said is like this, and that's really the answer. let me first, I'll rephrase it. The answer is Torah doesn't change. Circumstances change, and the halacha in Torah is applied differently because circumstances change.
So that's why you talk about the hetzer or the sack.
Exactly. In other words, if a Rav says this is permissible or not, they do it this way, they have to base it on halacha and a source. Remember, you asked me a question, do they base it on halacha or they just say, if you base it on halacha, it's not a change.
Right.
This would be like someone who comes to a doctor and the doctor says, you're not allowed to fast on Yom Kippur, your health won't handle it. So he goes to the rabbi, and the rabbi says, not only you don't have to fast on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to fast on Yom Kippur. So he just changed the halacha. No, the circumstances change because he's not well. And under these circumstances, the halacha is different.
But they're also based on opinion sometimes, right?
Yeah,
The
right, it
fact
has
there
to
will
be
a rabbi
based-
that says-
Right, it has to be based on a certain opinion in halacha. To a certain extent, I don't know if it is like that practically, but in theory, that's what modern Orthodox is supposed to be.
Right.
We're modern, but we stick to halacha, which means I'll try to be as modern as I can, but if there's no opinion in halacha of a true halachic authority that it's permissible, I won't do it.
Right. What's the difference between a psak and a hetzer? It's just the same thing. But
Same thing, yeah. Psak means a ruling, and heter means a ruling to permit something which normally wouldn't be permitted. Under certain circumstances, it's permitted. So is this clear? These are not changes.
Right.
It's really what everybody's saying. I'm just putting it into words that make it a little bit
It's
more
like
clear.
in the Torah, there's like a rule about like, for example, like there's a rule about majority, like going with like the majority. So even if there's different opinions and things like that, you're supposed to go with the majority.
Right.
So that is like, if it's like if you're looking at it like a diagram or like a tree, the Torah is not changing, it's like staying like.
Right, and sometimes if the majority changes, the halacha might change.
But it's still going true, staying true to the
Right.
emes of Torah.
Right, in other words, the principles are true. There are certain principles that the Torah is based on, and those principles are what we have to make the judgment. If there would be a principle in Torah that says, under these circumstances, you can drive to shul on Shabbos, the frum rabbi would say the same thing. But there's nothing in Torah that permits it. So if you do permit it, it's outside of those guidelines, of the Torah guidelines. So that means you're changing. But if anything is within the guidelines and it's based on certain principles in Torah and halacha itself, that's not a change. And we realize the only change is the circumstances. And when circumstances change, the halacha is applied differently. Okay, to be continued.
I was gonna add something. I was trying to spell my last name, and I don't know if she gave me like the more Yiddish way, and then the other one, I just wasn't sure what it would be, because it's not how it's spelled.
S-T-A-H-L,
Yeah.
right?
So it's not this, because I got the thingy wrong, but I guess it could be this or this.
So
And it's true, they're very cool.
in the way it would be like using, it would be like writing things in Yiddish.
Right.
And that would be Shin, Tes, Aleph. It could either be this way or it could be this way. Both ways would be acceptable. Which means you're putting a hey in the middle.
Give me the hand. Okay, I wasn't sure. I think.
Smart, evil.